for the coalition and its supporters, the polls make for grim reading this morning. If an election were to be held today, on today's Newspoll numbers, the coalition would lose 25 seats and lose government. After a summer spent learning to live with COVID, travel disruptions, supply chain issues and an undersupply of rapid antigen tests, the coalition is unpopular, and so is the Prime Minister. These are the worst set of numbers for them since 2018. But the coalition went on to win the 2019 election. You remember that, despite the polls. That fact is seared into the memory of the Labor Party. Polls are retrospective, not necessarily predictive. Let's go live now to Jonathan Lee. It's one thing for voters to say they will turf a government out. It's another to do it, isn't it?
It certainly is, Laura, and the ministers this morning are saying they're sympathetic, they're empathetic, and they are listening to what voters are saying. But the baseball bats are most certainly out. What we can extrapolate from the latest Newspoll is voters seem to be believing that the coalition is the better party and the better managers when it comes to growing the economy and dealing with the threat of China. But they're now starting to look towards the opposition and believe they are the better managers of getting the nation out of this pandemic and also dealing with the existential threat of climate change. In fact, if we start to have a look at the breakdown of these two numbers, we can see where voters are shifting. First and foremost, if we look at the primary vote, we can see the coalition is down a further 2 points to 34%. Labor now 41, up a further 3, and the Greens gaining a point. And what is significant there is people have often talked about the fact that if the Labor Party is to win government, they need a 4 in front of it. That remains to be seen, but we can always see the support of the Greens and how they will continue to back up Labor's primary vote there when we look at the two-party preferred, which will come up next. It's again significant because we can see voters turning away from the coalition, down 3 to 44%. Labor in a commanding position at 56%, winning a swathe of seats. And the better Prime Minister here, well, the Prime Minister continues to tumble as he struggles with issues like the rapid antigen test, 43 to 41. It's worth noting that back in February 2021, that was 61 to 27. You can see how popular Anthony Albanese has become by playing that small target approach. When Josh Frydenberg was asked about it this morning, he made the point that there is no rule book for trying to deal with a pandemic.
The Prime Minister, I and our colleagues have all said we're coming from behind. It's a very difficult environment and there was no rule book for this pandemic. But if you look at where Australia is today compared to other countries, we're in a very strong position. We have one of the lowest mortality rates in the world.
Now, Peter Stefanovic spoke to Stuart Robert, the Employment Minister, about his response to the polling, and it was an indication that they understand voters are frustrated.
On current trends, you'll be in opposition in a few months' time. Do you see it that way?
Polls come and go. We've all seen that over many, many years. It's been a tough 2 years, Peter. It's been tough for a lot of Australians. It's been difficult. It's been frustrating for everyone. Finally, we're seeing kids going back to school. Finally, we're seeing a normalcy returning to workplaces. But I understand people's frustrations.
Now, some might say, Laura, that at the moment the coalition is more popular than its leader, but with an election due, or at least expected in May, the question remains, is time running out for the Prime Minister and his party?